Tuesday. It's Holy Tuesday.
Yes, it is.
We are coming into Holy Week. Pastor Josh here, Pastor David Akoff. You've seen him singing his sweet melodies on stage, and now we're going to hear a little bit of teaching. It's something that you don't get to do quite often.
No, not very often, and that's.
But man, you jumped at this, and man, I really appreciate you coming on.
Got it.
I tell you what, I'm excited about this. This is coming into fruition. We prayed about this months ago, and this is kind of what's going on. And I hope you guys are enjoying this Holy Week walkthrough. I know me and Pastor David here, we're sitting here talking about, should I say Pastor David or Pastor Akoff?
David.
Let's go David. Pastor David. This
Hey.
Pastor David.
Well, Pastor D.A.
Yeah, the district attorney.
How about that?
So I will say this. I did find a good thing for these lumbar pillows. Check this out.
Oh,
Bam.
very nice.
I've been fighting these things with my videos. But guys, we are on Tuesday now. This is Holy Tuesday. A couple things before David gets started here. A lot of things happened on Tuesday. This is the day of controversy. This is a day of the parables, as you're going to kind of cover, and how much of the Gospels are taken from this account?
1/3.
1/3.
Yeah, 1/3.
So it's pretty important, I would say.
I would think so.
I would say this too, coming off of Sunday, the Lord gave me that message, and it's one of those things that I knew we weren't going to be able to cover everything that took place on one day.
Yeah.
And so the Lord gave me this, and guys, I appreciate you tuning in. So Pastor David Akoff has got some things, and so tell me a little bit. So we've got Jesus has rode into Jerusalem. The triumphal entry has happened. Monday, cleansed the temple, as we seen Miss Bethany kind of explain that a little bit.
Yes.
And now we're on Tuesday. So run us through exactly what takes place on Tuesday, so to speak.
Tuesday is not misrepresented, but it's not, by the mainstream, it's not well thought of, because most people when they think about Holy Week, they're thinking about Palm Sunday, the triumphal entry. The cleansing of the temple, maybe, but that's not a very popular theme to talk about. It really isn't. We talk about the Last Supper because everybody knows the Last Supper.
Right.
And, of course, the betrayal of Jesus and the events that led up to his crucifixion.
Yeah.
So those are like the mainstream. Even non-believers will say, oh, I know about the Last Supper, but Jesus being crucified.
Right.
But we leave out
so much.
We leave out a lot. 1/3 of the Gospels we're leaving out because we're not thinking about anything but those kind of mainstream themes.
Right. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with this, as you've kind of been following along and continue to follow along throughout the rest of this week to get us to Resurrection Sunday. Man, I'm excited about that one. I'm excited. I'm always excited about Easter. Everybody gets excited about Christmas. I'm like, man, Easter's my thing. So David, run us through kind of a couple things that took place a little bit on Tuesday. Kind of tell me and, of course, the crowd here, just some things that kind of happened on Tuesday.
Well, what I love about it is Jesus did on Tuesday what Jesus does, and that's taught and loved people. I mean, that's what he's all about. So the significance of Tuesday was he chose his words very carefully.
Yeah.
Because he knew that this day would probably be the last day that he would be able to teach, and that he would be able to bring things to certain people, a message that he needed to bring.
Yeah.
So and the word we like to use and throw around a lot today is intentionality.
Yeah.
So Jesus was very intentional about what he spoke and what he taught on Tuesday.
Yeah.
He was very careful, and he didn't hold back.
Nah.
He was kind of like punching a face, kick to wherever you want to kick him to, but he was very. They didn't hold back.
He didn't have a well, we won't go into that. He didn't have a filter that he was being watched at, and he wouldn't have cared.
Yeah.
So.
The parable of the two sons.
Oh yeah.
We can't go over all these
verbatim
because they're so long and in depth. He exposed the hypocrisy of the Pharisees and the religious leaders.
Yeah.
The two tenets.
Yeah.
The tenets. He talked about the tenets, and he teaches that we should bear fruit. There's a big deal about bearing fruit during this time, because he was showing the religious leaders at the time that what they weren't doing.
Yeah.
There was no fruit. It was they're basically dead in their faith.
Yeah. They took that well.
And they took it very well. So bearing fruit was a big deal. The wedding feast We talked about that, and the well-known response about paying taxes. Give unto Caesar which is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. I mean, you've heard that.
So you mean to tell me that I can worship while I pay my taxes?
You sure can. Hey, giving and joy.
There you go.
You're supposed to give with joy. You know, even if you're paying your taxes and writing a check to Uncle Sam, you're supposed to do it with a smile on your face.
Well, that's a later date.
Yeah,
that's a lesson for a later date.
He then talked about the greatest commandment.
Yes.
And this was to the Sadducees
Yes.
and the Pharisees. And he said, to love your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul.
First and greatest
The
commandment.
first and the greatest.
And I like what it says in the Bible there. It says, and the first and the second one is just like the first, that you should love your neighbor as yourself. They didn't like that.
No.
They didn't like that.
They didn't. And I don't think they were much about love.
Nah.
They're all about being seen and being noticed and
like put their ties on,
following the rules. Exactly. What am I going to look?
What am I going to look like? That's
I kind of struggle with that on Sunday mornings, Josh, because I know I'm going to be visible. On Sunday mornings.
Yep.
But I need to be comfortable.
Yeah.
So I'm always struggling with what do I wear on Sunday mornings. I don't want to look like a slob
right.
while I'm leading worship. But on the other hand, I don't want to look showy either, because I'm up there in a state of humility.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to distract anyone from their worship during the music time. So I don't want to wear anything that is distracting. So it's
and I think most of the process of it is we want to make sure that we're running that knife edge, like I talk about a lot. You know, the difference between truth and love. We hear Pastor Snow talk about that all the time. Jesus portrays that imperfect. He portrays that perfectly.
Yes.
Let me say. And so I think you do a good job. I think you look snazzy and comfy all at the same time. But let's jump back to this. We'll get off on a tangent.
He foretold the destruction of the temple, both the physical and the temple that was his own body that will be broken and will be put to death. The end of the age and the times to come, no one knowing the day or the hour of his return. He just went on and on about a lot of things that we know about, but a lot of people don't really even know that all of these things came about in one day.
Right.
I mean, that's a lot.
It's a ton, and you know, a lot of times I think we do such an injustice to forgetting the fact that these people back in those days were people just like me and you.
They were.
You know, you had your people who really didn't know who Jesus was.
That's right.
You had your people who didn't want anything to do with Jesus.
Same thing.
And then you had your snazzy hoity-toity people who thought they knew everything about religion.
That's right.
And Jesus is sitting there and he's covering it all in one day.
One day.
And man, I just, here in a minute, I want to break down one simple thing really quick. But the image, I want this entire week, as you heard me on Sunday and you heard me a little bit yesterday, I want you to be consistently thinking about, man, what did this look like?
Yeah.
What did it look like in Jerusalem, in the streets, when there was multitudes and multitudes of people? And there's this man, there's the song, Sunday's Coming, that you guys sang on Sunday, wonder-working rebel priest, that lyric.
Rebels.
Because they hated him.
Yeah, and he didn't clamor for the crowds. He didn't go and say, I want everybody to come listen to me. And the disciples didn't have to go get the people that wanted to listen. Yeah, they came to be taught. And listen.
And the ones that didn't want to, we see them fall away. We see that all throughout the Gospels. We see that great multitudes followed, and then we see some fall away. And that's usually when Jesus taught something that
unpopular,
and then conviction riled up in them. And that's why ultimately the conviction is what led to people hating him, and then it's ultimately what led Caiaphas and all the rest of the Pharisees to scream crucify.
Yes.
And we do that just the same. When we get convicted, we rile up against Jesus.
We do.
And so that's why these parables, what you're talking about. Yeah. And but finish out. I know you got a couple more things that happened.
Well, everybody wants to hear the words spoken to them by Jesus. Well done, my good and faithful servant.
Oh man, it should be your life goal. Should be your life goal.
And I spoke that to Alicia the other night.
Yeah.
We were studying together, and I started bawling.
Yeah.
Because I was confessing some things to the Father that which I do, when I sin, I confess it.
Yeah.
because that's what you're supposed to do. And I was weeping a little bit, and I just told Alicia, I said, I just want to hear those words.
Mm.
Well done, my good and faithful servant. I just want to hear those
Think
words.
about hearing, like we're talking about images, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen the and maybe you've seen this on the internet, it's widespread and there's different takes on it, but the first moment in heaven, the hugs and stuff like that people do.
Yeah.
I tell you. But yeah, I mean, that was Tuesday. That was teaching on how to hear those words. And so Matthew 21, 23 through I think 24, 51. It's a big chunk of Mark. It's a big chunk of Luke. And John's a little bit of a smaller chunk of these days.
Right.
But I would say this, and don't take into consideration that one gospel is lesser than the other.
Correct.
It's just different
perspective.
Very much so. Very much so. You know, Matthew wrote to the Jewish people. Mark wrote to the Roman lawful, pragmatic people. They understood practicalness.
Yes.
Luke was very detailed. He was a physician. He was a lawyer. Right. You know, he wrote to a certain crowd. And then John was like, man, I'm gonna write for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, so don't take that one gospel is better than the other.
All.
Take them all.
Yeah, different gentlemen writing these four gospels.
They had different perspectives.
Yeah.
And we always hear this: perception is reality.
That's right.
And so they all walked with Jesus. They all were very close followers, disciples of Jesus, apostles even. And I would say this, the best thing that I do when I read the Gospels, I don't know about you, but when I read the Gospels, especially going into Holy Week, I love to read all the accounts.
Yeah.
I love to read what Matthew's seen, what Mark's seen, what Luke's seen, what John's seen, and then take that and be like, I ask this question to myself all the time, what would it have been like to be there? You know, you got to think about this. And that's what I tried. That was my biggest goal on Sunday was, what would it have been like to be there?
I just wrote a song called What Could I Have Done? And the whole thing is, what could I have done if I'd have been there? Any different than happened? I would have been a sinner the same as everybody else. And Jesus would have died for me the same as he did everybody else.
Yep.
I could have done nothing different.
Nothing different. It had to happen.
It had to happen.
That's the sad part. So David, I want to jump into one quick thing before we jump off of here.
Yes.
And I think this every time I'm trying to teach. We always are trying to teach in certain things. David teaches with song. I teach with words and what I like to call rabble. But no,
good.
I think the thing about it is, and this is in Matthew 21, 18 through 9, or really 18 through 22, when Jesus is cursing the fig tree. And I found this to be probably, it's my favorite because it's so symbolic. Jesus doesn't hold back here.
No.
And because you got to kind of take your mind into what would it have been like for a Jewish person to hear and see what took place. We can't think of it from an American standpoint because this didn't happen in America. It didn't happen in 2025. Right. This happened 2,000 some odd years ago. You know what I'm saying? And so it says here, Matthew's account of this, it says, now in the morning, as he returned to the city, he's coming from Bethany, where he was staying, he was hungry. And seeing a fig tree by the road, he came to it and found nothing on it but leaves, and said to it, let no fruit grow on you ever again. And immediately the fig tree withered away. And now the disciples are sitting here saying, like, why'd you wait a minute, dude, you just cursed this poor little fig tree. And he says, you know, how did this happen so soon? Because it's accounted that this thing withered up just like that. And Jesus says these amazing words. He answers them. He says, assuredly, I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what was done to the fig tree, but also if you say to this mountain, be removed and be cast in the sea, it will be done. In all things, whatever you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive. And so I want to go not to that point. I want to go to this. This is the encouragement. As we sign off here, I want to leave you with this for Tuesday. Yeah. Jesus has entered. He's came into Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. You know, yesterday he cleansed the temple. You know, and there's some things about that, and it's insane. And the question still remains: who is this man? Yeah, that's still going on. Even to the disciples, they're like, okay, he's doing some stuff.
Well, they saw a side of him.
They saw a side of him, right? Yeah. They seen his deity. They seen his divinity.
Yes.
The presence of a fig tree, what we're talking about here, the presence of the fig tree in Israel was always a blessing of, it was a sign and a symbol of blessing and prosperity. And so when he comes to this point, we see the barren tree. It's got leaves on it. And there's a cool thing about figs and a fig tree. The fruit and the leaf looks the same. It's the same color until it's ripe.
Right.
And a lot of times the fruit comes before the leaf. And so it's kind of, if you're kind of catching on what I'm talking about here, it symbolizes the deadness of it here, symbolizes the spiritual deadness of Israel.
That's right.
And then while looking fruitful, it had nothing to offer. You know, they were hungry. They came to this fig tree and they're like, hey, I'm going to go get some food. But they walk up to it and there's nothing there. So it was appealing to the eye,
Right.
yet unfulfilling to the soul.
Ooh.
And so by cursing it and previously cleansing the temple yesterday, Jesus is pronouncing the coming judgment on Israel.
Right.
Also, he's talking about, Herod's temples it's going to be ripped in half.
Mm-hmm.
But also he's demonstrating his power to carry it out.
Right.
He's showing who he truly is.
Right.
And so I want to ask this to you, to me, to you, to
Yeah.
everybody online watching. A fig tree who has leaves and no fruit isn't really helping anyone.
No.
So I want to ask you this. Psalm 1 says this: blessed is the man who walks not in the way of the sinner, nor sits in the seat of the scoffer, but his delight is in the law of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water,
Mm-hmm.
who brings forth fruit in due season, whose leaf never withers, and everything he does shall prosper. And that's Psalm 1:1-3.
Mm-hmm.
And what that says is, you stay close to the living water.
Yes. Yes.
Your fruit will come in due season.
Yes.
You can't produce it. You can only bear it, because the power and the authority comes from Jesus and Jesus
Mm-hmm.
alone. But I want to ask you this: is your temple appealing,
Right.
but it really has no fruit?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for the church. I know here at CCMP, that's something we're constantly, man, we better make sure that we are bearing good fruit.
Yes.
And I think that's for everybody. And then I want to take it a step further. Jesus tabernacles with you. You are
Yes.
a temple that Jesus dwells within.
That's right.
So are you bearing good fruit, or do
Right.
you just look appealing to the eye?
Yeah.
But yeah, when someone comes to gain,
there's nothing there.
there's nothing there. So
And
that's
that's
something.
sad.
Yeah, that's something to leave them with. You got any final thoughts?
Well, these days Jesus knew what he was getting ready to go through,
Yeah.
but his focus was on being faithful,
Yeah.
because he was the shepherd of the people that God gave him to shepherd. And even though he was getting ready to go through dire circumstances, betrayal, torture, death, he was faithful.
Yeah.
And so that's the example I think that we all need to look at, is the example of Jesus being faithful under these really dire circumstances. And we have these little things that bother us day by day, but we can't function some days because we let the little things just bother us to the core. But we look at Jesus, and he was about to be killed, yet he's doing what he was sent to earth to do, and that was to be faithful.
And I'm glad you said that, because faithfulness gives God or not necessarily gives God, but it opens you up and gives you the opportunity to bear the fruit of the Spirit, and to be able to feed other people. Because without me and you being faithful,
right,
God's not going to use you. I say this all the time. Sin should never scare you for what God's going to do to you.
right.
Sin should scare you for what God won't do through you. And I think I've taken that from Robbie Gallaty or some other pastor of that case. But guys, I really appreciate you tuning in. David, Thanks for coming in and doing some Holy Tuesday info. We didn't cover everything. I want to encourage you, dig into your word, read what took place, follow along the rest of this week. I cannot wait for Sunday morning. You sing it on Sunday. Sunday's coming.
It's going to be good.
So guys, tune in tomorrow for Holy Wednesday. We're going to have another special guest. And man, hey, respond. Shoot me a line, comment. If I missed anything, let me know. And we look forward to talking to you tomorrow. God bless you. We love you all. This is Josh and David, over and out.
Amen.